It's very nice to see you through these technologies, and then I'm happy that you are okay. Did you receive the information? I think.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to begin in Spanish, and after that I present you. Okay.
No problem.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Muy buenos días a todos. Este señor, que es el director ejecutivo de la Asociación Americana de Aceite de Oliva, y actualmente Estados Unidos es, desde mi punto de vista, el país que en mayor medida puede ser de interés para los vendedores de aceite de oliva. ¿Por qué? Fundamentalmente porque es el mayor consumidor de aceite de oliva fuera de la cuenca mediterránea, y a su vez porque es el mercado que en mayor medida está creciendo en los últimos años. Brasil, que es otro de los grandes consumidores de aceite de oliva a nivel mundial, no productores o pequeños productores, entre Brasil y Estados Unidos ya consumen más aceite de oliva que, por ejemplo, España, ¿no? Por lo tanto, lo que ocurre en Estados Unidos afecta al resto del planeta, a los 66 países que producen aceite de oliva y a los 198 que consumen. Es un lujo tener con nosotros hoy a Joseph, ¿vale? Y lo voy a presentar y cuando I'm trying to explain which is the importance of USA in the field of the olive oil in the world. It's one of the most important countries from the point of view of the consumption, and also is one of the most important in the second level in production. If you want, you can begin, and let's begin when you want. Okay. Thank you very much for speaking in this exhibition. Thank you very much.
Juan, thank you very much for the explanation and the introduction. I hope you can hear me very well enough. I'm honored to have been invited to speak to this group. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but it is terrific with modern technology that we can communicate across the miles and the time zones so effectively. Yes, I'm Joseph Profaci. I'm the executive director of the North American Olive Oil Association, and I want to speak to you today about some interesting data and research that we are doing. We do feel that the United States is in an important role in the world olive oil market, and we want to take that responsibility seriously and continue to work towards future growth. So the data, the title of today's topic presentation is the key points regarding the U.S. olive oil market. Let's see. Okay, great. Here's the agenda of what I want to talk about. First, I will try to provide a little background about why the U.S. matters. Then we'll talk about what we're calling the pandemic phenomenon. We'll talk then about what the pandemic taught us, and then how we can put that knowledge to use. In order to make it a more enriching conversation today, a two-way conversation, I'm going to use a tool that I've been using for online presentations called Mentometer. I don't know if anyone is familiar with it, but with Mentometer, it's an online tool that facilitates communications between the attendees of large meetings. So this will enable you to interact with me and ask questions. Even though I can't see or hear you, we can interact. So the way we will do that is, if you have a smartphone, you can either scan the QR code. It'll take you directly to a portal on your phone, or you could open up a browser, go to www.menti.com, and then enter that code. I'll give you a second to try that, and once And then we'll run through a couple of slides just to test it out, so to see how it works. Okay, so I'm seeing people giving thumbs up. So some people, I guess, are connected, which is great. The instructions for getting to menti.com should be at the top of the screen of every slide. So if you lose your connection, that's how you can go back. Okay, so to try this out, we'll do a little fun exercise. I don't know if anyone else was fortunate enough to get to see the new Batman movie this week. I checked. I see that it also opened in Madrid. So here's a little quiz. Who's your favorite Batman? So you can use the screen to vote for your favorite Batman, and let's see who wins. Neck and neck, George Clooney, Christian Bale. Okay. Mentometer is I find it to be a very useful and interesting tool to help people get engaged in online presentations. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on who is your favorite Batman. Seems like Christian Bale is pulling ahead. But I'm going to go forward, and on your device, it'll tell you if I go forward. If you haven't voted, you can still move forward to the next screen. So the next screen will show here that I wanted to test the Q&A button. So at the bottom of your device, there should be a box that says Open Q&A. So that's where during my presentation, if you have a question or a comment, you can put that right into the box, and we will get the message. And then I can answer questions. So if you want to go ahead at this point, you want to send a note to say hello, to test that, you can do that. Someone already did, put great tool. I'm going to mark that as answered. I don't see any other questions or notes, but there we go. I got hi there. So this is how you can, during the course of this presentation, ask questions. I may wait towards the, some questions we may handle at the end, but this is how it will go. And your questions will appear on the screen when they're presented. Okay. All right. So let's go quickly. I know we don't have a lot of time. We have a lot of information I want to try to cover. So again, back to the agenda. The first thing I want to talk about is some background about the United States and why it is, and it's an important market for the world. And Juan touched on this, of course, in terms of consumption. The United States is a major player. It is third in consumption in the world, behind Italy and Spain, and growing. And that's another important aspect here. It is a non-traditional country, the United States, a non-traditional olive oil using country, and we are still growing. So I don't think it's inconceivable that in a short time we can become the largest consuming nation in the world. To give you an idea, if you're not aware of how the olive oil market in the United States breaks down, in terms of volume, olive oil represents only 18% of the U.S. market. The majority is consumed by canola, vegetable oils, and corn oil. Those are the three large commercially sold cooking oils. Total volume in the United States is close to 1 billion liters. And in terms of the olive oil sector itself, about 165 million liters. These figures, by the way, are retail figures. So of the olive oil market, 70% is extra virgin. There is virtually no virgin olive oil grade sold at retail in the United States. So let's talk about the pandemic phenomenon. This is a chart of household penetration in the United States. So for the several years prior to the pandemic, household penetration was stagnant. What is household penetration? It's the measure of the number of households in the United States that purchased olive oil in the past year. So prior to 2020, this statistic was stagnant and dropped a little bit, up a little bit, but basically was not changing. It was not changing for maybe 10 years. And also the same was true with consumption. It was very flat, slight growth, but basically flat for a 10-year period. And all of a sudden, there is a large spike in 2020. Really, really large spike. It came down somewhat in 2021, but it's still strong. So I see I have a question here. I'm going to see what the question is. Will you have access to the slides after the presentation? Yes, I can share that with. Of course, I have already shared with the organizers of the expo, so you can certainly have these slides. Okay. Okay, so that's again the pandemic phenomenon, a huge spike in consumption and growth and household penetration in the United States. Here, same thing. Basically, you can see the figures of total sales in millions of dollars. This is the three different grades: extra virgin, pure, and light. All three grades grew substantially. And what was interesting here also is that in the prior years, the sales of pure and light had been in decline. This reversed that. All of a sudden, we saw a big increase in both pure and light. So historically, price has been a major obstacle to purchasing more olive oil. I think that's universally true. When price matches a perceived value, we get a sale. So prior to the pandemic, the U.S. consumers considered olive oil to be one of the healthiest foods. We know that from surveys and general information. But despite knowing that olive oil was so healthy, sales were stagnant, as I pointed out. In the pandemic, that changed. What happened? It's not as though we had some major breakthrough in health news, and of course we have a steady stream of news about healthy benefits of olive oil. It's always been steady, but nothing drastic changed. What changed was the consumer's perception of how important it was to consume healthy foods. We were all concerned about our health during the pandemic, and that translated to sales of healthy products. So essentially here, they were willing to pay more now, right? To pay the price for that you need to pay to buy olive oil instead of a seed oil. It was worth it. So the price to value ratio shifted, and they bought more olive oil. Consumers bought a lot more olive oil. We looked at what did the pandemic teach us? We looked at what happened in the pandemic almost as an experiment, something to learn from. The key to growing consumption in the United States, we believe, is following the lesson we learned, which is let's focus on factors that matter most to the consumers in their decisions to buy. Factors that will affect the price to value ratio. Healthiness, right? Healthy was what drove the sales during the pandemic. But healthy is not the only characteristic that consumers look to in making decisions to buy and in valuing the products that they choose. There are 4 basic ones that we look at in the United States for consumers that drive sales. In addition to being healthy, enjoyability. Enjoyable foods are will increase the value to the consumer. If the product is natural and sustainable, same thing, that adds value. And convenience. If a product is convenient, again, more value. The great thing about the olive oil product is that it pushes all of these buttons. Olive oil has a story to tell for each one of these buttons. The challenge, however, is teaching and educating the consumer about these characteristics, so that they know and appreciate that the connection between olive oil and these 4 important characteristics. The challenge then was to determine how can we put this knowledge to use. So what the NAOOA did last year was conduct some consumer research. We wanted to know what olive oil messages will resonate the best with consumers. What messages will want them to buy more olive oil, to value olive oil more higher. So what we did it was a very extensive survey. I'm going to show you just a few of the slides here. We tested messages. First thing we did was to conduct a focus group of 13 consumers around the country. We asked them a lot of questions. We provided them with messaging on various topics to see which ones they understood, which ones they were confusing. The focus group enabled us to develop a precise list of messages that we wanted to test. So the ones that we tested related to connections between olive oil, you can see the list: brain health, olive oil process, that being the fact that olive oil is produced in a natural, mechanical way without the use of solvents, that it's heart healthy, that you can cook with it, that it helps prevent and treat chronic diseases, all of these. Then we asked the members of the panel of the survey, which of these, after providing them with the message, which ones made them more interested or much more interested in buying olive oil? These are ranked in order of the most important. So you can see that really all of them were important. All of them had an effect in growing an interest or making consumers more interested in buying more olive oil. But the ones that were the most effective, brain health, cognitive development and protection, that was the most important. We were surprised to see the olive oil process come up as the second highest message in terms of importance in getting consumers to be more interested in olive oil. And then heart health, of course, has been the one from the beginning that has driven sales. And cooking, the enjoyment, the versatility. So these are all the important messages that will resonate best with the consumers. Now, how we actually measured the effectiveness of these messages was by, at the beginning of the survey, we showed consumers, the respondents, a list of characteristics about olive oil and asked them, which of these applies to olive oil? Helps prevent disease? Is it good for you? Is it required to meet strict standards in order to be sold? We gave them this long list of characteristics and asked them if they thought it was true, if these things related to olive oil. Then we showed them the messages. Then we gave them the education, if you will, of the messages that we showed on the prior screen. Following that, we gave them the same question again. Which of these characteristics best describes or do describe olive oil? And you can see the difference. This is how we measured the effectiveness of the messaging. The characteristics of helps prevent disease was much higher after we gave the messaging of the brain health and other chronic diseases. These are very, very big movements in terms of shift of characteristics, especially the top 5 to 10, 5, 7, or 8. These are the messages that are resonating best with consumers, that will have an impact on increasing the value that they perceive in olive oil. Key then, of course, is to then deliver those messages. So the conclusions we drew from this research and from the data was, although the pandemic was a personal and public tragedy for us, for so many, for the olive oil industry, there was a silver lining here. Of course, there was the short-term boost in sales, but more than that, it provided us an insight into what we need to do to grow consumption in the future. We learned that the value to price ratio is fluid. We saw how quickly and dramatically it changed in 2020. The change can result in both large and swift increases in consumption. And we saw that during the pandemic, of course, health was the factor that drove the growth, that shifted that value, where consumers valued healthy products more than before the pandemic. But we know that that's not something that will necessarily continue to change. We hope, of course, that the pandemic is behind us. We don't wish for more trouble in that respect. But we know also that health is not the only characteristic that drives consumers to purchase more product. The health and sustainable messages, natural production, clean eating, the convenience of olive oil, extra virgin olive oil that can be a cooking oil and can be a condiment, all in the same bottle. That you can, if you're looking for a neutral flavored oil, olive oil has the solution. The olive oil category is really well established to hit, as I said, all of those buttons, and those are the messages that we need to convey to consumers to continue to shift the value to price ratio. So, of course, the big question is how do we do that? And this is some reason the last point on my conclusion is missing. In order to both develop the messaging and to deliver the messaging to the consumers, the United States market really needs to develop a program like the interprofessional groups in Spain and Italy and other countries, where we will collect some assessments in order to promote the messages of olive oil. We're in the process of doing that. Some of you may have attended the webinar that we presented to the American industry a few weeks ago. But this is a process that's very important. We now feel strongly we know what we need to do to continue to grow this market. And in order to do it, we need to have the funding. And so that's a big priority in the United States right now. Okay, so I see I have a couple of questions that have come in. How receptive to product traceability and olive varieties is the U.S. market? What is the impact of USDA organic versus non-organic olive oil? Well, I'll address the second part first. We are seeing continuous slow growth of the organic segment. There's no question that that's become an important factor of growth in the olive oil market. How receptive to traceability in olive varieties is the U.S. market? In terms of the olive varieties, again, we are seeing the growth of label information about varieties, much in the same way that the wine industry developed 20 years ago. We know that 20, 30 years ago, the question was, do you want red or white? This, at least in the United States, that was the question. Now, of course, then it became, well, do you want French or Italian or Californian? And now, the wine consumers know the difference between the Pinot grape and the Cabernet, and so it's a very identical parallel to the way the olive oil market is developing today. More and more we are seeing on label the identification of the varietals and the discussion of the different characteristics of oils that you get from different olives. So that's definitely part of the education that we will look to promote. One thing I will mention, however, is that with regard to the interprofessional type organization we're hoping to develop, in the United States it's called a research and promotion order, or sometimes they're just called checkoffs. And they are organized and supervised by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. U.S. Department of Agriculture, however, has said that organic products are excluded. So organic, to the extent the organic market grows, there are no assessments will come from organic product. They will not pay assessments. So that's an important consideration. Okay, there's another question. What hour is it in the city now? It's very early. Yes, it is. In fact, it's what time is it now? It's exactly 5 a.m. So I very well may go back to bed after the presentation. So don't ask too many questions. No, of course, I'm happy to answer as many questions as you have. Have you seen an increase in consumption of olive pomace oil during the pandemic? No, we did not. And most of the data that I have and rely on comes from the retail segment. So there's very little olive pomace oil being sold at retail in the United States. In terms of the import data, I know I looked at this, and I think there may have been some increase, but not major. In the United States, we as I showed in the early slides, we have a huge portion of the industry taken up by the seed oils of canola, soybean, corn, and olive pomace oil is not a major factor in the industry. Particularly, especially, and obviously this is where food service should be important, but it needs to grow, and it should grow in terms of its qualities. But in relation to the other seed oils, it is hardly a factor. I have another question. Okay, I have to mark as answered. Okay, what is the perception of Portuguese olive oil in the United States? More generally, is origin something of importance for the consumer? There was some recent research that I saw that was done in four different countries, and unfortunately I don't have it handy. I'm happy to share with Juan. Well, he's probably seen it on the importance of different factors, consumption in I think it was France, the United States, and I forget the other. There are two other markets. Anyway, there is an importance of origin in the United States. For years, the American consumer has always associated good olive oil with Italy, and that is changing. There's no question that we are seeing a change there. To the specific question of what is the perception of Portuguese olive oil, I don't know that there's a strong perception at this point. It's interesting. There's a restaurant in New York that I like to go to. They have it's a wine bar. Every week they change the menu to reflect the foods and the wines of specific regions. So I've befriended the chef to suggest to him, why don't we also include olive oils from the region when there is an olive oil from the region, to help grow awareness of the fact that yes, you can make excellent olive oil anywhere where you can grow olives. And so he's starting to do that. We did have a Portuguese menu. That's what gave me the idea. In fact, the last time I attended was a Portuguese menu, and I said, why don't we have Portuguese olive oil? So it's going to be part of the education that we need to do to consumers, to let them understand the varied and fascinating world of olive oil. That it can come from as far away and such exotic places as Japan, for instance. So. Okay. Juan, I'm sensitive. I know I have plenty of time, but if you need to, for me
we have 2 or 3 minutes more in order to begin with the next presentation.
Okay, excellent. So we have only 2 more questions, I think.
No problem.
It's actually the same question. Origin does matter. But I think less and less, to answer that question. I mean, we know that American consumers, probably the same is true all over the world. There's a favoritism for your local production, and so California has an advantage in many respects. But as I said, the European market is the one that developed olive oil, and Greece, Italy, Spain, to a lesser extent, a growing extent, Portugal. So these are all important. This is so the question: how do you think the Ukraine war and the lack of sunflower oil will affect the industry? It is, again, this will provide an opportunity for more growth in olive oil. We don't want pandemics and wars in order to have to grow our consumption. But sunflower oil has less of a role in the United States industry, particularly at the retail. So it may not have that big of an effect, but it resonates, and it is a concern we're watching in terms of the supply. And maybe this is the last question. Are U.S. consumers more attracted by ripe fruity or green fruity in terms of taste? There's no question that ripe fruity is where most consumers are today, but the trend is to become more interested in the more flavorful varieties. Look, the goal is to have American consumers with 3 or 4 bottles of olive oil. If they want a neutral oil, they can have a refined olive oil. To have a cooking oil that they can do for frying, and maybe a little bit better oil for some other cooking applications for sautéing, and then finally, a very special oil for condiment use. So we have our work cut out, but it's something that I think we can achieve, and we intend to do our best. Okay. I'm having trouble. Let's see here. The Americans know the difference between packagers and the producers. Well, not so much. And that's part of the brand's obligation to teach. All right, Juan, I think perhaps we should end up. You've got another presentation coming in. Thank you again very much for the opportunity to present and talk to the attendees of the World Olive Oil Expo. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. Hope I can be next time.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very interesting, your conference, and let's see each other in the future.
Yes, and so if anybody has any questions, here's my my email. They want to follow up, they can contact me directly. I'm happy to address your questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Joseph.
Okay.
All the
Bye-bye.
best. Have a nice day.